Hello everyone and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. As you can see, most of the leaves have dropped off the trees here in the pecan orchard at the Cimarron Valley Research Station at Perkins. For an update on how pecan harvest has gone so far in Oklahoma, we're joined by OSU Extension fruit and nut specialist Becky Carroll.
Right, this year's kind of been a little bit strange. We had a very early development of the pecans this summer, and so where we're usually crop thinning in early August, it was a few weeks into July, and so everything was early by 2 or 3 weeks. So that set us up for early harvest on our improved varieties. And so those things like Pawnee and Kansas that the growers are harvesting first, they were out there getting them in when it was really dry and dusty. And so they were happy to get out there and get the pecans in. And then we got some rain, so that kind of slowed them down a little bit. Our native growers, they usually wait till we have a hard freeze and the leaves start to fall. Well, we didn't have a freeze the normal time of year that we usually do. It's usually about November 2nd in the central part of the state, and it was about late November this year, maybe the 26th, 28th. And so some of the growers are just now starting to harvest those native pecans.
So of what has been harvested so far, the improved varieties, how are those looking?
Well, the people that had good, adequate irrigation have good quality. They're well filled, nice size. Those with a little bit limited water, the size may be a little bit smaller, and that's okay if they don't have enough water to fill them out. So a smaller nut that's well filled is better than a large pecan that is not well filled. So that can play in their benefit sometimes as well.
You mentioned some of the challenges with weather, of course, which we've talked a lot about on Sunup with a lot of folks who we interview. What were some of the other challenges? Were there some weevil issues?
Yeah, because of that early development on the pecans, they go from the water stage to the gel and then the dough stage, and that's when the nut meat starts to form. And at that stage, the weevil, they come out of the ground. Well, they can come out earlier than that, but once the pecans get to that dough stage, then they're vulnerable to egg laying. And so growers kind of have a time frame in their head, oh, we spray for weevil at this time of the year. But they really need to be watching the development of the nuts and see when they're changing to that dough stage, because some of them missed that window and got a little bit of early weevil damage this year.
You had a popular field day this fall, and now you're kind of looking ahead to programming in February that you'll be hosting?
We have a Pecan Pest Workshop. We've had it for the last few seasons, and it's an opportunity to learn a little bit about pest management, those weevils and other things. And for those growers who have private applicator licensing, they can get 5 CEUs, so 5 credits toward that license requirement that they need, that renewal. And so that's coming up February 20th in Shawnee at Gordon Cooper Technology Center. They can look for information on our webpage to register for that. It's a free session. They can come. It's an all-day workshop to get 5 CEUs. And then also have a pecan management class that we'll start advertising for, and we have limited seats in the class, only 35, so it fills up pretty quickly. But that meets from February to October, so they see the trees from dormancy all the way through until harvest time. So that's coming up pretty quickly as well.
Okay, and you have all that on your webpage, or will be there soon?
Soon, yes.
Okay, wonderful, Becky. Thank you very much for the update, and we'll see you again soon.
All right.
And for a link to Becky's pecan management webpage, just go to sunup.okstate.edu. A reminder, you can still attend next week's Winter Crop School, December 16th through 18th in Agricultural Hall on the OSU campus in Stillwater. Certified Crop Advisor exam preparation is on the 16th, and meetings will begin the following day. 12 Certified Crop Advisor continuing education credits, as well as Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry CEU credits, are offered. Registration is $225 and includes lunch on both days. To sign up or for more information, go to sunup.okstate.edu. With summer crops in Oklahoma in the bin now, Sunup's Curtis Hare caught up with OSU Extension Cropping System Specialist Dr. Josh Lofton to talk about everything from the growing season all the way through harvest.
Well, it's cold right now, but we're going to talk a little bit about summer crops. So Josh, looking back over the year, how was the growing season up until harvest?
Well, I mean, I think I've said the last several years that it's been very unique. So I got to stop saying that it's unique, and maybe that uniqueness is just what we're at now. But it was a different kind of summer. We had some spots that had some really good crops and some spots that had some really bad crops. And then we also had some crops that did really well, and then some crops that typically do well for us and kind of don't. And again, I think it's just kind of a summer thing, and the way we get rainfall during the summer, mile marker by mile marker. I've heard some growers on like their sorghum crops say that it was one of the best sorghum crops they've ever had. And then there are some sorghum growers that almost always harvest something that didn't harvest anything this year. So that corn that was planted really early looked really good and yielded really good. But some areas were a little too wet in that early part of the spring when we normally plant, or were just overly dry and they couldn't get plants in. And so they delayed planting a little bit later. And that corn crop that was planted into April, maybe even into May, just really didn't turn out for us.
Drought in September, it was really hot and really dry. I'm sure a lot of wheat producers were, it was decision time whether they're going to plant or not, but we did get a really good rain, a couple good rains. How did that change, maybe the aspects for summer crop? Because there might have been a lot of open fields with some opportunities, right?
Yeah, and you were right. We had that dynamic to where when we typically would get in maybe our really early wheat crop, maybe our dual purpose wheat, or maybe our graze out wheat, to where we could develop a lot of that forage before it got cold. We really didn't have a lot of moisture, and so a lot of that crop maybe is a lot smaller than it normally is, or maybe it's just not even there. The good thing for our wheat producers is that we did get those rains kind of come in, and we saw a lot of fields that might have laid fallow this winter going into the summer get wheat thrown in. Now, we still have a lot of fields open. Some of those fields are typically forage fields, and some of those fields are typically grain fields.
So what about forage options like spring oats? Are you looking at anything like that, given kind of that drought that might have kept some of our dual purpose producers out of the fields?
Yeah, and so that's been a really big question we've gotten over the last several weeks, and stretching on in back into October and September is we some growers were able to get that wheat in and it's come up and it looks okay, but the forage value or the forage amount is a lot lower than normal. Or some growers just kind of held off and kind of punted towards the spring. And the good thing is we have options in the spring to get some forage. Now, it's not going to be as good as an all-winter wheat to where we can sit there and graze on it, but we do have things like our winter oats become very popular, kind of coming in February. That mid-February is kind of that when that door opens for us. We were talking a little bit earlier how when I came to the state, that was kind of the option, is that mid-February is when that door opens, but we didn't really know when that door shut. And that's kind of what we've been looking at the last couple years, is how late we can actually go and produce enough forage before the heat comes in on the back end into April and May and really shuts down and turns that crop. Because we want to get, from a hay perspective, we want to get a lot of that either hayed or chopped before heading or right around that heading time. So when we took a look at that, we really have a good open door between mid-February on in through the first couple weeks of March, to where, given a good year, we can produce a good amount of forage.
Well, we'll check back in with you in a couple of months and see how the spring oat situation's going.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Josh. Josh Lofton, Cropping System Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
We want your feedback. The annual Sunup Viewer Survey is underway, and your input is important. What do you like about the show? What topics do you think we should cover in the future? And what would you like to see more or less of on Sunup? All ideas are welcomed. The survey runs throughout December and will only take about 5 minutes of your time. Just scan the QR code on your screen or find the link on the Sunup website. Thank you for watching, and thank you in advance for your feedback. It's an issue that more and more livestock producers are dealing with every year: dewormer resistance. This week, Sunup is traveling to Haskell County to see an OSU Extension program that is addressing the issue.
So it's kind of one of my favorite parts of my job is we get to work with producers on a research project. So it's a cooperating family, and we're looking at deworming the cattle. Today, actually, we're following up about 14 days later to see if the product that they were using actually works, because we know that in Oklahoma and other parts of the U.S., we're starting to see resistance from our dewormers that we're using.
So as a rancher, we tend to do what we've always done forever, and we've always wormed twice a year, and now we're seeing that resistance, and we see some weight loss in our cattle, and so we wanted to know why. And this study has helped us see which wormers are working and which ones aren't.
Yeah, so we've known that resistance has been a problem for different livestock, and goats was the first one that we saw the resistance, and then we thought, you know, cattle would be immune to it, but now we're starting to see that crop up into some of the herds where, you know, the cattle just aren't doing as well, and well, we dewormed them. Well, the product is got to be 95% effective, and we're seeing sometimes 40%. We're open to any family that wants to work with us. This is kind of an ongoing project that's been going on for now into the second year, and I do believe this next spring that'll conclude. We should have enough numbers where we can maybe hopefully with the veterinarians like Dr. Biggs can give us some idea and tell producers maybe a better management strategy with what you're using.
So you've been taught health management practices the same way for 30 years, and then you're told, hey, maybe this isn't working. Well, it gives you some hesitation as a rancher when someone's telling you, don't give that medicine, don't give that preventative vaccination. It scares us because we don't want to get put in a bind where those cattle are set too far back to be able to breed back. So seeing the numbers and seeing the data really helps build that confidence that, hey, maybe this is the correct route to go. We do need to make a change. We can safely make that change.
We'll have much more on this issue in the weeks ahead. In the meantime, if you would like to check out more information on deworming resistance, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Highly pathogenic avian influenza is a highly contagious disease of poultry, and a second flock has been detected in Oklahoma. Now, it's important to remember when thinking about this disease that it's not unusual for multiple flocks to be found once surveillance is in place. And good biosecurity measures need to remain in place, both for commercial flocks but also for our backyard producers in this state, because the disease is actually spread by wild birds that are naturally migrating this time of year. So take extra precautions and pay attention to the Oklahoma Department of Ag, Food and Forestry's HPAI biosecurity guidelines whenever you're thinking about moving especially people or additional birds on or off of your operation. Because HPAI affects a large number of birds, entire facilities are either depopulated or die because of the disease. And this has impacts at the grocery store as well. Oklahoma isn't the only state being affected by this disease right now. So while our food supplies are safe and these birds are being detected before they ever enter the food supply chain, you may see some limited supplies on the grocery store shelves as well. This means that the price of eggs, for example, may go up in the coming weeks and months ahead. Now, our detections here in Oklahoma are in broilers. HPAI just doesn't have as many effects in broiler production, and so we may not see as many limitations on chicken on the grocery store shelves as what we may see on eggs. But it's important to remember to follow good safety precautions with your food at any time at home, including cooking them to appropriate temperatures. Many producers here in Oklahoma enjoy raising their own poultry and egg products at home, and Oklahoma State University Extension has resources to help you keep your flock safe. Look for biosecurity resources and links to our online backyard poultry class on sunup.okstate.edu.
Good morning, everyone. This is State Climatologist Gary McManus with your Mesonet Weather Report. Well, here's how I see rainfall in Oklahoma over the past few years. You go about 130 days without a single drop of rain, then you get about 2 weeks of record rainfall, gully washers, filling up your ponds, and then you go another 130 days without a single drop of rain. Sound familiar? That's what we're seeing a little bit, not quite that extreme, but that's what's going on currently in Oklahoma. Luckily, our drought monitor map hasn't changed, but let's take a look and remind us where we were. Well, you can see we still have the worst drought across eastern Oklahoma, down in southeastern Oklahoma, and also up in northeastern Oklahoma, a little bit over in the north central Oklahoma, Osage and Kay County, that region, but mostly across the state, not any drought at all, a little bit of abnormally dry conditions. We do see that over parts of southern Oklahoma, down into central Oklahoma, but overall not too bad. So currently we're on another dry spell. Last week it was 2 weeks. This week we're up to 3 weeks, so 21 days without at least a quarter inch of rain in a single day over almost the entire state. Just down there in far southeast Oklahoma, they've had some decent moisture for this time of year. However, it is starting to pile up with those deficits once again. You can see that on the 30-day rainfall map. Now, up there in northwest Oklahoma, they've had some good rains. Scattered here and there, some decent rains down in southeastern Oklahoma, up in east central Oklahoma. However, they're really hurting. Now let's take a look ahead. A little bit of optimism for the state. We do see, at least for that next week period, increased odds of above normal precipitation, especially across the far south central parts of the state. It's not a greatly increased odds situation here, but it's certainly good to see that green instead of the brown over the state. Now, what we don't want to see is what on this for the 8 to 14-day temperature outlook, and that's greatly increased odds of above normal temperatures across the state, but especially across the western third or so. Up into north central Oklahoma, it scooches over a little bit. So we don't want to see warm weather, at least relatively for this time of year, because that would again put pressure on that soil moisture. So we need a little bit of winter to get in here. Even a little bit of snow would be wonderful. So despite the dry spell, our impacts aren't increasing dramatically, and that's what we'd expect this time of the year in the cool season. As long as we don't get those abnormally warm temperatures, we should be okay for a little bit longer, hopefully get some moisture in here. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Good morning, Oklahoma, and welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. Our topic this week is the topic of advocating for our industry. We live in an interesting time in 2024. There's less than 2% of our population that is actually in production agriculture, which means over 98% of our population, it's easy for them to lose track of where food actually comes from. We find it interesting in a lot of consumer surveys anymore that when consumers hear about things like beef quality assurance certification, it really boosts their image of beef as a production industry and beef as a product. It raises their opinion of us as beef producers. And I think the message here is that we want to be willing to share our story, because there's a lot of the consuming public that would like to get a better feel for where food actually comes from. We have become to some extent a victim of our own efficiency. Production agriculture has proven to be very sustainable. We became very efficient. The typical American farmer or rancher now accounts for feeding about 160 people. So how do we go about being an advocate for our industry? Well, aside from sharing your story, I would encourage producers to get involved. Whether it is your county or your state or your National Cattlemen's Beef Association, join those associations, get involved is one means of doing that. You can also go online and get your Masters of Beef Advocacy, which is a really effective tool for learning how to advocate for your industry. Other trainings you can get online. I know in past months we've talked about BQA certification, but you can go online and get that certification. That does a lot to boost the image of beef production in the eyes of consumers. And again, be willing to share your story. We have to be willing to embrace that beef production in this country has proven to be very efficient, very sustainable, And with all the technology and animal husbandry skills and knowledge that we have banked to this point, the beef industry really has a positive story to share and to tell. As always, I appreciate you joining us on Cow-Calf Corner.
Finally today, we find out why Jamie Longacre is a 2024 Distinguished Alumna in the Ferguson College of Agriculture. Video production manager Craig Woods put together our story.
Hard work is a skill Jamie Longacre learned early in her life.
I was born in Tulsa, raised in Kellyville. We had a little small cow-calf operation there. And then my mom and dad, Bill and Judy Mackinac, were just probably the greatest influences on my work ethic, because my mother always worked and my dad worked multiple jobs. When you grow up in an atmosphere that everyone's got 2 or 3 jobs, it just kind of instills in you, you've got to work harder to get ahead and work smarter to get ahead.
After graduating from high school, she followed her sister and countless relatives and attended OSU. Encouraged by a good friend, she also applied for an OSU Ag Legislative internship.
She said, hey, you've got a gift of gab, and I think this is something that you will enjoy. And so I applied and interviewed and thankfully was selected, because undoubtedly, that internship changed the course of direction for my entire life.
Jamie graduated with a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics.
Really, that internship was the aha moment. It was that light bulb experience that I just saw that public policy truly did impact rural Oklahoma, and it truly does impact farmers and ranchers' lives.
Jamie worked for the Oklahoma Secretary of Agriculture and later became the Director of Policy and Governmental Affairs for the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association. Jamie became the first female executive director of the Oklahoma Beef Council in 1997.
Looking back, I'm just so honored, and that I, as a young female, that I had the opportunity to lead, one of the largest beef councils in the United States.
During her tenure, she dealt with challenges such as the BSE scare and implemented the national Beef It's What's for Dinner campaign. But she also started several initiatives to improve cattle quality, including the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Oklahoma Beef Quality Summit. After leaving the Oklahoma Beef Council, Jamie joined the lobbying firm ran by the late Clem and Bart McSpadden as a legislative and marketing consultant.
I love the Capitol. I loved public policy. I just love the fact that you can make just so engagement can really change the way that lawmakers think, the way the elected officials look at an issue, and I just thought, this is something that you get bit by they say you get bit by the political bug.
Jamie decided to go out on her own, starting Longacre Incorporated. She credits her upbringing and life in agriculture for being successful.
Back to my mom and dad, who had 2 to 3 jobs my whole time growing up. I mean, I was like, I know I may not be the brightest bulb or the sharpest knife, but I promise I can outwork anyone.
Jamie is one of those people that really understands that process, has that relationship with legislators in the state of Oklahoma who can be a connector and help legislators understand what we do in OSU agriculture, and help us and help me understand what legislators find important and where we need to do better to make sure we're providing a return on investment.
And I think having someone who has an ag background herself, who came through the 4-H and FFA programs, and then lives that every day. Her family has a cattle operation, and they live in Kellyville, which is a more rural part of the state, that when she can bring that perspective, when she is in the midst of policy discussions and trying to have effective policy, I think that makes a big, big difference.
My time at Oklahoma State taught me, just relationships mattered so much, whether it's with your professor, with your advisor, with your fellow students. Those relationships just were so critical back then and today. And so I really attribute a lot of our success with our firm to having just great relationships and people being able to trust what you say and be able to know that if we're bringing information or we're educating you, you can take it to the bank.
Jamie and her husband John own an auto dealership in rural Creek County and are committed to OSU. Their son Turner is a Ferguson College of Agriculture student. Together, they've sponsored several scholarships, as well as donated to the New Frontiers campaign. Jamie serves on several OSU committees and organizations.
I just think you give to those things that you love. And whether it be your children, whether it be your university, whether it be your church, whether it be your fraternity, your sorority, whatever the case may be, you give to what you love.
If there's a better networked or connected person in the state of Oklahoma than Jamie Longacre, I don't know them. She seems to know everybody and everyone, and not only knows them, but is very friendly with them. And she brings that connection and those friendships to really help support OSU in many different ways, whether it's on the Dean's Advisory Council, whether it's Women for OSU, whether it's supporting the OSU Foundation, any number of events. Jamie brings not only her own personal skill set, she has that ability to bring others to the table as well and really create a rising tide that lifts all boats.
I wouldn't be where I am today without OSU and without the Ferguson College of Agriculture, and we're just forever indebted for everything that they've given us. So thank you for this honor. I'm very, very humbled and just to say thank you.
Celebrating Jamie Longacre, 2024 Ferguson College of Agriculture Distinguished Alumna.
That'll do it for our show this week. A reminder, you can see Sunup anytime on our website and also stream us anytime at youtube.com/SUNUPTV. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at Sunup.